Before any work is done on the airplane, it's important to test and document the performance of all of the aircraft systems. This begins with the run-up check. In this run-up checklist from the aircraft manufacturer, the following items are checked and documented. The fuel pressure is recorded separately for the electric and engine pump, followed by the pressure with both pumps on. Next, the oil pressure is checked and recorded both at idle and at run-up speed. The RPM drop for each magneto is recorded, and the ignition switch is checked to ensure that it operates properly and grounds each magneto at the proper switch position. The annual inspection should always include stopping the engine by turning the ignition switch to the off position to confirm grounding of the magnetos, instead of pulling the mixture to idle cutoff. Do not return the key to any magneto on position before the engine stops, as a backfire can result, which may damage the exhaust system. This is followed by checks of the idle engine RPM, the ammeter, and the vacuum gauge for the gyros. The fuel selector is checked to verify that it moves freely and feeds correctly in all positions. The carburetor heat control is checked, and the engine is tested at various power settings and throttle adjustments to make sure that the engine responds smoothly and properly. Finally, the engine is shut down with the mixture control to check for proper mixture setting on the carburetor and that the engine shuts down correctly. Now, this is also an excellent time to check a number of other areas of operation. The brakes can be checked for evenness and braking effectiveness, and all the instruments and radios can be checked before moving the aircraft into the shop. Take your mechanic on a test flight before the annual to evaluate any issues or questions you may have before beginning work. It's also a great way to warm up the oil before the oil change. Once the run-up and systems check is complete, it's time to begin disassembly for the inspection. This is an area where you can easily save some of your mechanic's time and reduce your costs. First, you'll want to remove the engine cowl and start the oil draining while it's hot. While the oil is draining, you can remove all the inspection covers and interior parts to prepare for the inspection. If this is your first time working on the plane, check with your mechanic to find out what items need to be disassembled for inspection. Your maintenance manual will help you learn how to remove all of the appropriate items properly. Now, here are some important tips to help you with the inspection disassembly. First, get some small Ziploc bags to keep all of the screws and hardware. You want to write the contents on each bag. Use a permanent marker, and you should be very specific with each bag so that you don't get the hardware mixed up. For example, mark one bag spinner screws and place only the spinner screws in it. Second, make sure that you mark the alignment of every part that comes off so that you can reassemble it just as it was before the inspection. In this case, we've marked the spinner and back plate so that we can align it the same way after we're done. Next, be very careful when removing stubborn screws. You can easily waste a lot of time working on a stripped screw head when you should be going through the inspection. One way to help prevent this is to only use a hand screwdriver to loosen screws and make sure that the tip is in good condition. I like to use a multi-bit screwdriver like this one with a No. 2 Phillips drywall bit to grip the screws snugly. If you sense that a screw is becoming a problem, call over your mechanic before it gets stripped. Sometimes they have tricks for removing difficult screws before they have to be drilled out. You should always replace worn screws with new ones. It's easy to do this if you have your own collection of replacement screws and fasteners. Purchasing a stainless steel screw kit for your plane is relatively inexpensive, and you'll always have a replacement screw handy when you need it. You can use a tackle box or a parts box like this one to keep your collection organized. Finally, be very careful with the removal and storage of plastic fairings and trim parts. Many parts, such as wingtips and interior plastic, are very fragile when removed from the airplane, and it's not uncommon for them to get broken while lying around the shop. One way to protect your wingtips is to clamp them to the top of the wing with a pad and a spring clamp.